My journey through education has been, to say the least, a strange one. Until I was well into high school, I never would have imagined that I would end up with a degree in history and English, like my father. From a young age, I believed that I could do anything, or be anyone. I could be a pirate, a hockey player, or a drunk. I never believed, though, that I would end up with a job as a professional, having to suit up every day. Above anything, though, I wanted to be like my papa. He was a captain of the Toronto Fire Department and had an extreme passion for hockey. He played on Team Canada in 1954, the first Canadian team to ever play against the Russians. To a young boy, he was obviously a great source of admiration, someone who worked hard in life, whom I always wanted to be like. He passed away 4 years ago, and I still hope every day that I make him proud. My focus was always on sports, above all, hockey. I learned how to skate probably around the same time I could walk, and was playing hockey as soon as I could grip a stick. Throughout elementary school, I focused a lot on sports, could care less about most other things. My grades were below mediocre, and I never pictured myself as being involved in education beyond the bare minimum. My work habits were horrible, and my ability to read and write was below average. By grade 8, I had reached an educational low. My English marks were bad, but my history marks were horrible. I had a 53 in grade 8 history, and wrote that this was because I don't like history, so it bores me and don't really try. If I saw my grade 8 history teacher now, I don't think she would believe where I am, which is why it probably came as a shock to her that I'm a teacher's candidate working at a school in which she's principal of. My life and my educational goals completely flipped upside down once I reached high school. I started playing guitar when I was in grade 9, something I'd never really considered before. Music had always been a foreign language to me. Saying I couldn't read music was the same as saying I don't speak Spanish. It just wasn't going to change. However, I figured out that when you truly want to learn something, if you devote yourself to it, anything is possible. One day, I up and taught myself guitar. I still play whenever possible. Of course, I gave up many times, and my guitar would go untouched for months. But then the desire to learn would come up again, and then the guitar would be in my hand. That desire to learn was something new and amazing to me. I had moved beyond guitar now, and started trying other instruments, like the harmonica and fiddle. By the way, I still don't speak Spanish, but I started again learning French by taking a course this past summer. I was always a math and science student. I never exactly tried hard at the subjects, but they came much easier to me than the others. I always did, though, have a great love of movies and RPG video games. Where I couldn't focus in school, I remember being able to completely absorb myself in a game or a movie. I remember when Ocarina of Time came out for N64, I played the game over and over again. I was deeply fascinated by it, and it wasn't until I was older that I realized it wasn't strictly movies or games I was in love with, but rather stories in general. For my 13th birthday, one of my relatives bought me a gift card to Chapters. At the time, I would have much preferred money. However, a trip to Chapters greatly changed me, and then I picked up the first real book I would ever read, and from then on, I never stopped. The book was part of a long series, and even though I struggled through the first one, I became engrossed in the book and naturally had to read through the rest of them. After that book, I never stopped reading, and I always have at least one book on the go. Those first 10 books took me about 10 months to read. However, as I went along, my reading pace greatly increased. I continued on to other series and other genres after that first, but reading was now a large part of who I was. I now read multiple books per week, depending on how much time I can spare. I read anything from the Symposium to the Hunger Games. My personal library is well over 1,000 books. Becoming so engrossed in reading changed who I was. Where I had once found history boring and English impossible to focus on, I now saw them simply as a new venue for more stories. By the time I was in grade 12, I was not only enrolled in all the sciences still, but also taking history and 2 Englishes. It was an extremely difficult year, and it took me until that year to decide that above all, I wanted to pursue further knowledge in history and English. Questions of how to write a novel, and the thought of dissecting novels and finding out how it worked, instead of dissecting pigs, was a much more intriguing thought. I attended University of Toronto for a double major in English and history, however ended up finishing with the requirements for a minor in classical study and philosophy as well. It was a long 4 years, but some of the greatest of my life. I knew from early on in university that I wanted to be a teacher, and was well on track to that goal, making sure that I met all the requirements needed. Life, however, is not so easily planned. In my 4th and final year of university, I hit a low point. Long story short, while I managed to get accepted to Teachers College, I was going to be unable to attend due to a drastic need for surgery. I had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease years before, and eventually, though, things caught up with me. Luckily, I was able to postpone school and take a year off to deal with my sickness. Unluckily, it was the worst year of my life. I lost my ability to focus on books, or movies, or pretty much anything. A year of no school or work can really alter a person's perception. Despite all of this, though, I graduated university, and am now attending Teachers College. While I may be perfectly fine now health-wise, I still have this final year at UOIT, till I'm prepared to be a teacher. But I know now that I will be able to make it through this, and whatever comes next. Somewhere down the road is a master's waiting to be completed. If you had asked me where I would be now when I was in grade 8, this would have been the last thing I thought of. With a lot of support, and thanks to my discovery of music and literature, I know now that I will never be done learning.